Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Church Solutions Podcast. I believe this is episode 323. Steve Lacy is not with us today, so he cannot correct me. So that's a good thing. But we're glad that you are with us today. My name is Phil Thompson, and I hope everybody is doing well out there as we are well into the first month here of 2022. That's unbelievable. So I have a guest today, and he's an old friend of ours. And let me take a moment to read you his bio, and then we'll get into what we're going to talk about. For over 15 years, he's worked with literally thousands of business leaders to help them achieve their mission and to do more good in their communities, as well as around the globe. He's the founder and CEO of an advisory firm known as Be Good at Doing Good. And his passion is coaching entrepreneurs, business leaders to help them grow their organization and give back to their community. He specializes in strategic planning and organizational structuring. He's helped us a lot here at streamingchurch.tv. He also helps with leadership management and cultural building and all those good things. He also facilitates mastermind groups and retreats, and he also does inspirational and practical motivational speeches to companies and nonprofits. He's worked with church organizations. In fact, his family were missionaries overseas in Asia. We'll talk about that in a little bit. He also owned his first business. He's from, he lived in the Tucson area here, which is where we're from. And his first business was a restaurant in the 1980s. Well, he attended the great University of Arizona. Good basketball team this year, you know.
That's right.
And then in the 1990s, he spent 5 years as the VP of an Asians operations for Global Tech International, which was all throughout Asia. And then in 1999, he purchased his own high-tech manufacturing company, and he built that into a global leader and sold it in 2005. So Paul Bellows is our guest, and his book is called Your Business Coach in a Book. Let me repeat that. Your Business Coach in a Book. And it was just recently released by a good friend of mine in December last month of 2021. Paul's got a master's degree in Asian studies from the University of San Francisco, and he loves spending time sailing. I didn't know that, Paul, sailing.
All right. Yes.
Wow, I didn't know that. Wow. So welcome, everybody. Paul Bellows. Paul, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Phil. Thanks for having me on the show. I think we did this a few years ago on another subject, and it was so much fun. I appreciate you having me back again.
Yeah, thanks. So it's always a pleasure. As I alluded to during your bio, you worked with us for several years, helping us kind of fine tune things here at streamingchurch.tv, as well as our other companies. We have a new product out called mychurchdaily.com, which I'll plug shamelessly right now. People can look it over, but it all has to do with getting on Alexa devices and having flash briefings. I'll talk about that later if we have time, but it's called mychurchdaily.com. So Paul, you have a little bit of an experience with Christendom. Your parents were involved in ministry and missionary work in Asia. Where at in Asia were they involved?
Primarily in Thailand, a little bit in Malaysia. And I was fortunate enough as a 15-year-old teen to go over there and, just kind of immerse myself in the culture and food and language. And then we did crusades and started churches while we were there. And I eventually graduated high school in Thailand and then came back to the States for college. But great adventure, a lot of fun and a lot of good friends and a lot of just bringing people to the Lord and making the good news available. And so it was a start of a long relationship I had with Asian cultures, if you will.
I've always wanted to do that. I've traveled a little bit. I've never gotten the chance. Maybe I will someday soon. So Paul, let's talk a little bit about our topic today. Are you ready to face the top 5 challenges of 2022? So I think this is to be good for church leaders and people involved in churches, volunteers and stuff. The top 5 challenges of 2022. And some of this is in your book, right?
Yeah, it's laid out in my book, and it's really meant as a workbook. It's meant to get in there and answer questions and dive deep and help you, figure out your business in a way that's more profitable and brings value to more people. And 2022 is going to be a challenging year. And so I just kind of put it out there. And I think for most business leaders, nonprofits or for-profit businesses, most of these issues are relevant and relatable.
Yeah, and obviously this applies to ministries and churches as well. So that's why I thought it would be good to get into. So let's just jump into it, Paul. Right. So you've got top 5 challenges here. You've got 5. Let's start with the first one. I think I've got this right. The first challenge you've got here is lack of a focused strategic vision. Tell us a little bit about that. Why is that a challenge, and how do you overcome that?
So let's talk pre-COVID. Before then, it was kind of a lot easier for organizations. It doesn't matter, a one-man person or a big company, they kind of set a vision of the future. And that's what I see a vision as, is being strategic. We have 3-year vision. What do we want to look like in 3 years? What do we aspire to be? What do we dare to achieve? Mm-hmm. So, when you have normal, economic situations, you can kind of plan for the future. But I tell you, when COVID started, all that long-term planning pretty much went out the window, and it just became short-term survival planning, right? Yeah. And I remember working with you guys. You really helped so many people right off the bat when the COVID came, and you were able to, take on a lot of churches that needed help. Well, that's what all we could really focus on at that time. And so what I find recently is everybody's still in this kind of survival, short-term planning, methodology in their head. Mm-hmm. And so I'm finding that you really need to step back, still have that long-term vision of where you want to be and where you want to go and what those goals look like, how you're going to get there. And so I'm just thinking, we got to balance the short-term need to kind of, stay on top of everything, but we got to balance that with our long-term goals. So there's some alignment there, right? So we're making sure that, what we're doing now is really important and is really driving us to our vision. So the challenge is hey, I don't have a strategic vision anymore. I'm lacking that. And so my book kind of goes into how to create that vision with you and your team, get everybody on the same page, and make sure that everybody knows where you're going, how you're going to get there, and what are the resources and people needed to achieve that. And so that's the first challenge, is overcoming not having a vision and kind of setting a new course.
Yeah, it's so important. It's just so important to have that, and a lot of churches may have a mission or a vision, but sometimes you need to rethink it or relook at it. Yeah. And see, are you on track? Does it need to be modified a little bit? Things change, and that means sometimes you have to be willing to go with the flow and make some changes in order to fulfill what you're trying to do. So.
Yeah, you hit it.
Yeah. All right. So lack of a focused vision, lack of a focused strategic vision. That's the first challenge. And let's move into the second challenge. And you've got down here, improving leadership skills. I remember many years ago, John Maxwell, I think he's out of San Diego at one point, but then he's got, I don't know if he's still around, if he's still doing some things, but
he is. He's really involved, and he's a real, top thought leader in terms of leadership, for all types of leaders.
But he made the statement, which I'm sure has been around for a while, that everything rises and falls on leadership. I mean, he made that kind of popular for me. I'm sure it was around for a while, but everything rises and falls on leadership. And I remember that is so true. In every organization, every church I've worked with a few, and pastoring and executive pastoring and volunteers, everything rises and falls on leadership. So improving leadership skills. Why does this seem to be such a challenge for people?
Well, I think it ties to the first one somewhat, in that if you don't have a strategic vision, there's this other quote out there that you will never be greater than the vision that guides you. So if you have no vision, then you're kind of being the type of leader that's being very reactionary and maybe just problem solving. Mm-hmm. Whereas today's leaders be that big picture, set the vision, and then make sure that they have the plan and the people to execute the plan to achieve that vision. So improving leadership, I think, goes back to, hey guys, what are we trying to accomplish here? Why is that important? Let's get everybody on the same page, and then holding yourself and everybody to accountable to achieve that. And ultimately, for me, leadership is kind of getting the right results by using the right people and the right plan and the right methodology to achieve, the goals, but doing it the right way. You could be a lead through fear or intimidation, or you could lead through cooperation and kindness and a shared vision. And so leadership to me is getting back to leading with that clear strategic vision, and then making sure that we're coming with a heart and a servant's heart, and making sure that our leadership is always focused on how we bring value to others. And if we focus on that and we have a vision, then I think we can move our organizations to a higher level where it's just not reactionary, it's actually purposeful.
Yeah, that's a good point. Reactionary versus purpose. And I've worked with people that had leadership through fear, and then the other way. Why is that hard for pastors? I think because I've worked with some pastors that were really pretty good speakers, and they worked hard on their presentation and they worked hard on their delivery. How can a pastor be a better leader? I mean, what kind of, are there tools out there? Are there resources out there? I mean, obviously your book, but are there some resources that can help a pastor become a better leader?
So I think, there's obvious online tools and resources and management tools that help us understand our business better, right? They interpret the data. And that could be everything from, your message that you put out on Sunday to your advertising. And I think so there's great tools out there, but the number one tool starts with the pastors working with their board and making sure that they do have that clear vision. They understand their roles, and that leader is not only leading the path to the future, that church leader is creating a culture of where there's buy-in, and we're really focused on setting certain goals and criteria that make the church a better place to come, bring in more values, to the parishioners, or to the guests that are coming. So how do we get together on the same page? And my book and other resources like that really help making sure that the staff and the board and the leadership are all on the same page, and that they're being aligned with what their goals are, and the thoughts that they're having, and the words they're saying, and the decisions that they're making are truly aligned. So when I'm talking leadership, it's about really bringing everybody together and moving away from just, I'm a great leader because I'm a great speaker. That's just one aspect. There's plenty of great speakers that maybe don't know how to lead their operations well. So if you're that great speaker and you don't know how to lead operations well, there's some things you can work on yourself, but there's probably some components of leadership that you're maybe missing from your organization. You need to bring somebody in, for example, who is maybe more operational minded and can let you focus on your talent. So leadership is really getting good results through the right people and putting those people in position to succeed. And I think that nowadays that's the challenge, is how do I bring all these people together and, focus on short-term and long-term, and not just, getting through the COVID.
Yeah. Well, that's so true. And there's so many pastors and even volunteers that you have to work with boards, church boards, or whatever you want to call them, leadership teams, and you really, it really takes some skill to be able to do that. So let's move on, which you kind of touched on, I think, here in the last few seconds, about the third challenge. And the third challenge is trouble finding right fit people. Now, let me if I think where you're going on this, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember the old analogy of you can get people on the bus, but you need to get people in the right seat on the bus. Some people may not be on the right bus. They need to get off the bus. And then
Right.
there's other people that might be on the right bus, but they're not in the right position. So trouble finding right fit people. Am I kind of moving along the correct
Yeah.
lines of that?
Yeah, I think that, and I think people can involve, your staff and your team and your volunteers. But I think when I refer to right fit people, it's also the congregation, the people that you're serving, that are looking for spiritual food.
Mhm.
They have to be aligned, and you want your team aligned with, of course, your values and what you do well.
Mhm.
And right now, for example, just finding people to hire or finding volunteers can be challenging because of everything else that's really going on. It's a big challenge finding a right fit employees. So, I tell my business customers as well as my nonprofit, uh, your job's really about finding those right fit people and making sure that you retain them for the long term, and that they're bringing in more folks. They become your sales team. They become the people that spread the good news about what you do. And so you know it's hard to find right and fit employees, but you can be the employer of choice, and you can be the church of choice. And that means really bringing the right message to the right audience through the right methods. And it doesn't matter if you're a business or a church, you have to really plan that out and experiment and use some of the tools like you have that create a new message to a new audience out there. And I think that's part of dealing with what we have now, is making sure that we hire the right people so we can attract the right folks into the organization, into the church, into whatever you're trying to do. I think it all starts with people. Technology is great, but business and creating value for other people really is about engagement one-on-one. And I think leaders now more than ever have to really fine tune their ability to engage and bring value and create real loyalty and trust. And that actually requires planning. That doesn't happen by accident.
Right. Yeah. I remember, and I've actually, in my many years of ministry, I've worked with some other churches and even done a little bit of consultation. And I remember asking this one pastor, "Well, who's your target?" He had this church that he was trying to grow. I said, "Who is your target, so to speak?" And he goes,
Yeah.
"Everybody. I want to reach everybody." I'm like, "No, that's not really the right answer. I mean, I understand you want to reach everybody, but you've got to have a target. Are you trying to get young families with children? Are you maybe trying to reach a community maybe a little bit older? You really have to narrow it down to what you're trying to do. You really can't be all things to all people. Now, I mean, Paul in the scripture talks about that, but he's talking about that in more the context of when you're speaking one-on-one, trying to find commonality and stuff with different people one-on-one. But if you're trying to really grow your church or grow your team, you just can't be, you got to have something, you got to have a target. You have to know what you're looking for.
You have to have a target. And this is where, when you really know yourself and what your audience likes to hear, your job is you said connecting one-on-one, but a really good speaker, a really good leader can actually talk one-on-one to hundreds of people at the same time. Right. And so that's the power of expressing your word and connecting with all these individuals. So if you can do that one-on-one, then that's part of leadership, is expanding your voice and awareness so you could coach or pass your message on to hundreds, if not more, at the same time. And that requires a lot of skill. And at the same time, it's very valuable. And we know that church leaders can develop that. And when they can do that and connect one-on-one with hundreds of people, that's how they can build their services. And the people will more likely say, that guy's connecting with me.
Right.
And in order to do that, that has to be a right fit person. You can't force that on anybody. So I think the more you can share your message online, through streaming, through, community involvement, the better chance you're going to have of connecting with the right folks.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So we're talking about getting ready to face the top 5 challenges here of 2022. And we've talked about lack of a focus, strategic vision. We've talked about improving leadership skills. We've talked just now about the trouble finding the right fit people. Let's talk about the other challenge, lack of funds. Boy, it's always a challenge, isn't it, Paul?
It is a challenge. And, going through COVID, obviously, a lot of churches face that challenge. And fortunately, through your tools alone helped hundreds of churches find ways to get more fundraising, find ways of getting donations. And at the end of the day, there are bills to pay. And that requires that we connect and people feel like it's part of their as part of who they are and their responsibilities to help with tithing and other ways of fundraising for the church. So how do you raise funds when it's challenging already, and then you're faced with these conditions? Yeah. And it does go back to leadership, and it does go back to having a financial plan. Having those good budgets and sticking to them, and trying and experimenting with things, but then tracking the results. So I know that fundraising and working for a nonprofit or for a church requires its own challenges. And that's why I think it's important to be innovative. And that's where technology can really come into place. But at the end of the day, technology still doesn't replace that one-on-one connection.
Right.
So as hard as it is to grow, and we have to use the balance of technology to put the word out, but inviting people to have a one-on-one conversation is still the best way to get fundraising done, I think.
Yeah. And I think too, I have a little bit of experience with this. Money follows vision. And so, when a lot of churches actually did not too bad during COVID-19, during the hard times, we're still technically in the pandemic at this point, but a lot of churches did okay because they were good at getting people to buy into their mission, to their vision. And so, people are going to, if you can, as you were saying, connect with people, if you have honed your leadership skills and built a team, people will support your ministry, even during difficult times, because they have bought in, so to speak, to the vision. They have bought into the mission of the church, what you're trying to accomplish. And I think that will really help. So, if you're having problems, I would just say this from my own experience of working with churches as a senior pastor, as well as an executive pastor for a long time. If you've got money problems, you need to look at your budget, obviously, but you also need to look at your vision and, what's going on here? Why are not people supporting you? Is there something that needs to be clarified, something that needs to be changed, something that needs to be adjusted? Because that's, to me, where people will find success in ministry is when people get the word out, what they're trying to do, clarity and effectiveness. Yeah. So, anyhow,
well said. I love the money follows the mission or the vision. Yeah. And you're exactly right. And that's why these challenges all connect. And that's why I started with the vision. Right. You have to have the big vision, and everybody shared in the development and the implementation of that. You have the leadership capabilities to execute the vision. You have to put the right people in place, and ultimately the funds will come out of that effort, right? It's just like profit for a real business. I don't think that the goal of a business is necessary to create profit. The goal of a business is to create right fit long-term customers. The profitability is just the way of measuring that. So if you're doing good bringing in funds, to me, that means you're doing good because you're doing a lot of other things well, operationally, organizationally, culturally. You're doing a lot of things well, and the money is just the measurement of that. Yeah. And that's something you need to measure. but you're absolutely right. The money follows the mission, and then the mission brings in the right people.
Right.
Which
Yeah.
brings us to the fifth, if I can segue here, brings us to the fifth, a challenge of this year is time, lack of time.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, my time is stretched as much as it's ever been, just because of the challenges of raising a family and a business and helping out as many leaders as I can. The time management thing is a challenge for somebody like me who considers time management to be one of my strengths. So I can imagine when I'm working with the leaders I work with, is how do I get more done with less time?
Right. Yeah. Everybody has the same amount of time. I mean, I've heard this, and I'm going to probably butcher the quote, but everybody has the same amount of time, right? But it's how we manage that time. And I think it has to do with priorities, what's important. And there's been a movement lately, I noticed on somebody's written a book, Less is More, about, what's the term? Minimizing, what's the word? Minimalization. Yeah. But I like, easy for you to say, but I like it because there's so much clutter in our lives, not just things, but even clutter as far as things we shouldn't be doing.
Right.
Other people should be doing it. You touched on it earlier, getting the right people in place so that you're not doing everything. And I think that drains our time, because we end up wasting our time, so to speak, doing some things that other people could be doing, or we shouldn't be doing at all. And I think this is true with even, again, church stuff. Sometimes churches try to do too much stuff, and the people get drained. The volunteers get drained, the leadership gets drained and burned out, and everybody gets cranky, and it's just not a good atmosphere. All right. So we're out of time here, Paul, but the book is called The Business Coach in a Book. And you can get this on Amazon, right?
That's right. It's the best place to go. You can go to my website, paulcbellows.com.
Okay.
And there's a book page there, or just go straight to Amazon and put in Your Business Coach in a Book and Paul Bellows, and it'll pop up. And it's a workbook. It's meant for organizations and leaders and teams. I think most of your audience could get some value out of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I like the fact that it's very practical. So, if you're a volunteer in your church right now, or if you're an executive pastor or senior pastor, it fits. And even if you're doing things on the side, if you are somebody listening who has a business, this would be so practical. So The Business Book in a Coach, that's the title, right? Did I get it right?
Business Coach in a Book. Yes. Yeah. And I have an autographed copy for you, Phil. So I can't wait to give it to you.
All right. Awesome. All right. So Paul Bellows has been our guest today on the Church Solutions Podcast. Before we wrap up, if you get a chance, go to mychurchdaily.com. That's our sponsor, which is, full disclosure, it's us. We have several products, streamingchurch.tv and other things, but mychurchdaily.com, if you want to get on Alexa devices, Amazon has these Echo devices, and you could do a flash briefing. We've got several churches using this now. It's brand new. And I think there's like a 2-week free trial. And awesome. As usual, we'll help you as we do everything. We have support all the time. So Paul, again, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me here. We'll see you soon.
Yeah. And for Steve Lacy, who is not here today, but will be back next week, my name is Phil Thompson. Please take care of yourself and take care of each other. We'll catch you again on another episode of the Church Solutions Podcast.